Dusky Gopher Frog project started in 1987 with the discovery of Glenn's pond population by Glenn Johnson and his brother while Glenn was working for the U.S. Forest Service. At the time, it was a single population with less than 100 individuals. Currently, there are 6 separate emerging populations and over 200 individuals at the Glenn's Pond population alone. This project is comprised of federal, state, nonprofit, university, and zoo partnerships, each with its own individual mission statements and goals for achieving the recovery and restoration of the Dusky Gopher Frog. A mission statement is used to summarize the overall goal of an organization and the ideals behind why it exists. We're going to be looking at U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks, the Nature Conservancy, Western Carolina University, and the Memphis Zoo as examples of how different missions have been used to restore and recover the Dusky Gopher Frog. And then we're going to ask individuals from these organizations what has made this project successful in order to better understand how multiple agencies with different missions can come together for a similar goal of restoring an endangered species. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service mission statement is to work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. Their work with the Dusky Gopher Frog began in 2001 when the gopher frog was listed as a distinct population and critically endangered. At this point, they began funding research and monitoring the Glenn's Pond population in collaboration with Dr. Peshman. In 2012, they were able to designate critical habitat for the Dusky Gopher Frog and establish a recovery team. In 2013, a cooperative recovery initiative was formed with the Mississippi Sandhill Crane National Wildlife Refuge to ensure that there would be a gopher frog population on refuge property. In 2015, the Dusky Gopher Frog recovery plan was finalized. And in 2017, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service planned and helped with the introduction of captive bred frogs from zoos to Ward Bayou Wildlife Management Area. In 2018, the first verified breeding at the Mississippi Sandhill Crane National Wildlife Refuge was recorded by Angela Diedrichson. The USDA Forest Service works to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the nation's forests and grasslands to meet the needs of present and future generations. As we said previously, it was a Forest Service employee who found the Glenn's Pond population in 1987. And with collaboration of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they were able to begin construction of New Pond in 2001. This construction didn't end until 2006. But in 2003, Mars Hill Upper and Lower Pond restoration began. By 2008, restoration of Pony Ranch Steves and Ash South was able to start. And in 2013, gopher frogs colonized Pony Ranch Pond from Glenn's Pond population. In 2016, the first gopher frog egg mass was observed at New Pond 10 years after its construction ended. In 2020, Mars Hill Lower Pond restoration got a revival in a collaboration between U.S. Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Forest Service, Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks, and Western Carolina University and the Nature Conservancy. The Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks works to conserve and enhance Mississippi's wildlife, fisheries, and parks, provide quality outdoor recreation, and engage the public in natural resource conservation. They began monitoring the Dusky Gopher Frog population in 1987 after its discovery by Glenn Johnson. In 1995, they constructed the Glenn's Pond drift fence and managed it. In 2004, Mike's Pond was discovered by Mike Sisson, who was working for Mississippi DWFP at the time. And in 2006, they collaborated with Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife on the construction of New Pond. In 2017, Mississippi hosted its first reptile and amphibian regional meeting. And in 2020, they assisted U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, the Nature Conservancy, and Western Carolina in the restoration of Mars Hill Lower Pond. The Nature Conservancy is one of the main nonprofits that works on the restoration of the Dusky Gopher Frog, and their mission statement is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends, prioritizing a world where people and nature thrive through tracking climate change, protecting land and water, providing food and water sustainability, and building healthy cities. This is reflected in the fact that before the Nature Conservancy began their own restoration work with the Dusky Gopher Frogs, they offered TNC1 Pond for the first successful translocation of Dusky Gopher Frogs to a non-natal pond. In 2008, the first gopher frog egg mass was found at TNC1 Pond, and in 2009, the Nature Conservancy began their own head starting program. In 2010, they translocated to Mike's Pond and expanded their translocation efforts to Mars Hill Upper Pond in 2015. In 2017, they further expanded into Powerline Pond, and in 2018, the first gopher frog egg mass was found at Mars Hill Upper Pond. In 2020, in collaboration with Western Carolina University, they were able to translocate to Steve's and Ash South Pond, and in 2020, the first gopher frog egg mass was found at Powerline Pond. There are many universities that have worked on the Dusky Gopher Frog project, but Western Carolina University is the university that currently houses these efforts, and thus we will be focusing on their mission statement, which is to create learning opportunities that incorporate teaching, research, service, and engagement through on-campus, off-campus, online, and international experiences. Research with universities began in 1993 under Richard Siegel at Southeastern Louisiana University. And in 2001, Dr. Joe Peschman continued the research on Dusky Gopher Frog populations while at University of New Orleans. In 2002, he began the Head Starting and Research program. And in 2009, he took over running the Glens Pond Drift Fence. In 2013, Pony Ranch Drift Fence was constructed and monitored. And in 2014, a collaborative effort between University of Southern Mississippi and Western Carolina University was started to study the protoparasite causing mass mortalities in tadpoles, also known as Dermomycoides. In 2016, the first translocation of metamorphs to Ash South Pond began, and in 2019, the first egg mass was observed at Ash South Pond. Much like universities, there are many zoo partnerships that work for the restoration of the Dusky Gopher Frog, and these institutions work under the Species Survival Plan, whose mission is to oversee the population management of select species within AZA member institutions and to enhance conservation of this species in the wild. The partners for the Dusky Gopher Frog individually strive to connect the activities of the Species Survival Plan with in situ conservation. In 2002, captive rearing of Dusky Gopher Frogs started at the Detroit and Audubon Zoo, and in 2005, the Gopher Frog SSP, or Species Survival Plan, was formed. 2008 saw a breakthrough of in vitro fertilization achieved at 2 of the zoo facilities, and in 2017, the first release of zoo-bred Dusky Gopher Frogs took place at Ward Bayou, which was restored by the Army Corps of Engineers. 2020 saw the first natural breeding of gopher frogs in captivity at the Memphis Zoo. So what has made the Dusky Gopher Frog partnership so successful? To learn this, I asked the experts themselves. Linda LeClaire from Fish and Wildlife Service said that for a successful collaboration, it is important to form a group with a shared mission. If the group maintains frequent communication and agrees to strive for consensus, it makes it easier to achieve common goals. Ed Moody of the U.S. Forest Service said, all of the people and partners care about the frog and doing the right thing. The problem begins in the relationships and communication. If you're a bad communicator, it's going to cause problems. Restoration is a marathon, not a sprint. Many of us have been working together for nearly 20 years. Friendships develop and a collective synergy is created that allows for greater habitat and species restoration. Aaron Holbrook of Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks said open communication and some level of flexibility must exist in order to overcome policy conflicts between partners, which seems to have been done excellently well in this project. Jim Lee of the Nature Conservancy said alignment of these good partnership attributes can be an uncommon phenomenon. Therefore, working on not only your main goal, but also on your partnership and everyone else's needs and desires. Dr. Joe Peschman can speak for himself.
It's because everybody working on the project is really passionate about the conservation and recovery of the gopher frog. And it's that passion that I think keeps everybody together and working really hard towards this common goal.
Steve Reichling, the Memphis Zoo Director of Conservation and Research and point person for the Gopher Frog SSP, had this to say.
Aside from all the obvious things and the things that are going to be necessary for any kind of conservation project, multi-party, I think what makes our effort special, not unique, but special, and definitely a big part of the success is the relationships, human relationships, and the durability and continuity of those relationships. And, you know, there have been a few key people that have rotated through this program, but always in a really slow, transitional, pass the torch kind of way, and not really a lot of it. And so, as you know, there is a lot of very long-term relationships, professional and friendship, that bind this program together. I think that's almost always what sets apart really extremely successful multi-institutional conservation program.
So what makes the Dusky Gopher Frog Partnership so successful? It's a shared goal that spans all of the mission statements of each agency and passion and drive to see that those goals are achieved. It takes constant communication that stems from mutual respect, trust, and acceptance. Divergent skills are needed to support each other's strengths and weaknesses, and validating everyone's work and accomplishments is necessary for the long-term survival of these partnerships. Conservation is a marathon, not a sprint. And if we only celebrated the big victories, we wouldn't be as successful today. Thank you very much. I will take a moment to acknowledge our partners with the Army Corps of Engineers who work to restore Ward Bayou Pond and the Land Trust, who maintain and improve the private uplands around Glens Pond. Thank you.